Good morning. Welcome to the bridge. Happy Mother's Day. I'm just going to talk for a bit. I wrote it down on my phone, which I don't love to do, but I just had a baby and I can't remember what I did yesterday, so I just wrote it down. Last week, I told Steve that I really liked the series that we started about feeling behind in our relationship with Christ, because it's something I've been battling with maybe the last 8 months or so. And then Steve texted me on Wednesday and said, hey, could you talk about the homework this week? To which I checked the email and thought, what the heck was the homework? Read it and thought, I can talk on that. So that's what I'm up here talking about. Where did I see God working in me this week? So as I was saying that I was chatting with Steve about struggling in my relationship with Christ, in church we often talk about the peak and valley of our life circumstances. So we often feel like we're either climbing the mountain and things are going really well, and then you get at the peak and that's like, man, everything is just great right now. And then we slide down to the valley where maybe things aren't going so great. And in the valley, it's hard to find Christ when you think everything's going wrong. And it's true for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a kid, if you're an adult, if you're a parent, not a parent, we all go through hard times. And so I'm struggling with this kind of like double life where in my family, I feel like we're on the peak of the mountain. We just had a baby, our family is complete. But in my relationship with Christ, I feel like I'm heading towards the valley. Probably for the past 6 or 8 months, I've really put my relationship with him on the back burner. I kind of had a rough pregnancy and then just a new mom, and I've just been really tired, and I've had all these excuses of why I shouldn't be or couldn't be engaging with him, which has been hard for me because about 1.5 years ago I was baptized and I was in a women's group, and we were doing this really cool study about how we're all capable of hearing from God, and we practice about listening to God, and we would be in this group and we would focus on one thing, and then whether you heard something or felt something or like maybe it was an emotion or a word that you heard, and it was just so cool to see so many people have like the same kind of connection. And it was just this like, it kind of lit a fire, like God is here, he's within me, I can hear him. I just felt like he was really at the center of my life. And so since I've been like just tired and had other things going on, sorry, I've lost myself. Since I haven't been focusing on him, I've felt more anxious, just really disconnected. And then I feel that portrays in my relationships as well. And so when I heard the series last week about where I am in my relationship with Christ, I kind of felt like maybe he's not here with me because, Christ doesn't operate in chaos. So then I thought, when Steve asked, where is Christ working in you this week? And I thought this is going to be a challenge for me to find. But then he showed up, like he always does. So we have a new baby. His name is Jack, and he's up here. And he is a really great sleeper until about 3 a.m. And then he's not. He is, and he's not happy that he's not sleeping. Like, it's not like he's awake and he's like, hey, let's party. It's like, hey, I'm up and this sucks. And so it's going to suck for everybody. And so he's fussing, and I'm sitting there with him. And then there's a scream. And then I'm like, look at the baby monitor of our oldest son, Benjamin, who's 5. And he's not in his bed, and he's running down the hall full tilt. And he burst into his room, and he's crying, and he's upset, and he had a bad dream. And so he crawled into our bed and immediately fell asleep. And I don't know how it happens, but if you've ever had a small child in your bed, when they fall asleep, they become like a 300-pound gorilla. Their arms are flinging, their feet are flailing. They take up way more space than what makes sense. And so I'm annoyed that I have a crying baby, I have a flopping 5-year-old, and then as I'm staring at them, I just got filled with so much love for these 2 little boys. And how lucky that we are that our bed is the safest place in the world to those 2. And so I turned straight to prayer and thanking God for choosing me to be their mom, asking him to protect them and asking that they would feel his love so immensely that they would never doubt just how loved they are. So I think for me, the work in Christ is a softening of my heart and an encouragement to turn to him in gratitude and praise, and the reminder that he will join me in the chaos, but that he'll find me in the quiet moments too, no matter how few and far they are between right now. So that's what I had to share. Okay, I'm going to pull myself together for a sec. Matt reached out and asked if I would read from Philippians 1 this morning. So it's Philippians 1, 12 to 26. And it's Paul speaking, and he is imprisoned. And I thought it was kind of cool because the last line is about what the Christ is doing in him, and how therefore he's helping other people. So Philippians 1, 12 to 26. And I want you to know, my dear brothers and sisters, that everything that has happened to me here has helped to spread the good news. For everyone here, including the whole palace guard, knows that I am in chains because of Christ. And because of my imprisonment, most of the believers here have gained confidence and boldly speak God's message without fear. It's true that some are preaching out of jealousy and rivalry, but others preach about Christ with pure motives. They preach because they love me, for they know I have been appointed to defend the good news. Those others do not have pure motives as they preach about Christ. They preach with selfish ambition, not sincerely, intending to make my chains more painful to me. But that doesn't matter. Whether their motives are false or genuine, the message about Christ is being preached either way, so I rejoice. And I will continue to rejoice. For I know that as you pray for me, and the Spirit of Jesus Christ helps me, this will lead to my deliverance. For I fully expect and hope that I will never be ashamed, but that I will continue to be bold for Christ, as I have been in the past. And I trust that my life will bring honor to Christ, whether I live or die. For to me, living means living for Christ, and dying is even better. But if I live, I can do more fruitful work for Christ. So I really don't know which is better. I'm torn between 2 desires. I long to go to be with Christ, which would be far better for me. But for your sakes, it is better that I continue to live. Knowing this, I am convinced that I will remain alive, so I can continue to help all of you grow and experience the joy of your faith. And when I come to you again, you will have even more reason to take pride in Christ, Jesus, because of what he is doing through me. All right, and now Tim's up.
Can I have the slide decks up? We're doing things a little differently with this series. In this teaching series, we are trying to go to passages of Scripture. So that's why Jill read from Philippians. I always want to say Corinthians. Philippians 1. And we're going to read it again when we go through this as well. And Jill, I have one thing to say to you, besides thank you for sharing. Christ does operate in chaos. And that's what we're going to actually learn about today. Paul's life was chaotic, and in our men's ministry, we're seeing tons of stories where people have almost given up hope, or the chaos is just too much of a burden, or why can't I get a job? And that's when God is forming us and doing stuff in our lives. So what you've been going through is where God's building your character, and that's just part of the journey. Okay, so Claude gets the award for spring outfit today. He's got shorts and sandals. Carl gets a boo because he went back to winter clothes. Boo! I brought my spring shirt, so. I know, it's a cheater. I told Carl it's a cheater shirt, so I can still be warm but pretend I'm doing spring stuff. Okay, so The Formed Life is the series that we're working on, and it's what is God doing in my life right now? And then practically, how do I respond? And the theme for this one this week is reframing your circumstances. Reframing, thinking about it differently. And Steve sent out an email this week, so I just read it because it kind of gives you an overview of where we're at. Bridge family, this Sunday, right now, we're stepping into week number 2 of the Formed Life as we look at Philippians chapter 1, verses 12 to 26. And the surprising way Paul sees God at work in the middle of chaos that he never would have chosen. Paul writes from prison, a place that looks like limitations, frustration, and delay. Actually, it's a house arrest he was in while he was writing Philippians. And yet he sees something we will often miss. What feels like a barrier may actually be the place God is forming you, character. All of these places where life hasn't gone the way we expected, seasons that feel slow, hidden, discouraging, or maybe even hopeless. But Paul shows us a different lens, a reframed lens. He teaches us that reframing isn't pretending everything is fine. It's learning to see Christ's presence inside the very places we we would want him to remove. Thanks for this picture, Tony. When I'm at the back, for our men's group, if Steve gives questions for discussions during the week, I just stand at the back and get the questions. Last week, Tony's head was in there, so Actually, I just went and took a picture of his head and cropped it in. No. So Jill was reporting on the question. I know in our men's group, some guys wrote a response. The question was, before the week ends, name one place you see God at work in someone else. One sentence, one encouragement, one moment of naming that grace. So I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I'm going to tell you some of the men in the men's group did it. So if you didn't do it, then you got a guy ahead of you. So that's pretty bad. Men are pretty bad at this stuff. But I want to encourage you to do it. At the end of this service, we're going to have another list that Steve prepared. And I want to encourage you to actually act on it. It's not normal. It's not something that comes easy. We kind of just slough it off. But I have found that unless you write something down, you kind of don't commit to it. So I've been doing sales coaching or sales strategy with a young man. And every week we get in a truck together and spend 12 hours together. And some of the things that I've been teaching him is about having a plan. Like, who are you going to talk to? What do you know about them? What did you observe about this business? Think on it, and what are you going to ask them when you go in and meet them at the door? What are you going to leave with them? What do you want to take away? And the messaging is, did you move the needle? And so the application for you and me is, did we move the kingdom needle this week? And what specifically did you do to do that? So reframing is not the F word. My mother used the F word a lot. Fine. It was at her funeral that I played the same joke out. My sister was behind me when I was saying my mother used the F word a lot, and she was trying to pull me away from it. She would say fine to everything. Uta would ask how the kids were after she watched them for us, and she'd respond fine, which drove Ut nuts because she wanted some details as to how the kids behaved or didn't. If she was sick, you'd say, how are you? Fine. If she was eating a meal you knew she didn't like, how's the food? Fine. Anyways, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about reframing. And the difference is, instead, it's choosing to see that God is at work when others, or even yourself, cannot see any evidence at first that he is doing something amazing, exciting, and using your life circumstances, the ones you don't like, to achieve it. We are looking into Philippians chapter 1, 12 to 26, and Jill read it from us. The big picture, Paul doesn't escape his circumstances, he reframes them. What looks like limitations becomes participation in God's plan. Paul is imprisoned, yet the gospel advances. His perspective transforms the meaning of his situation. The things you most want taken out of your life, away from your life, are often the exact places where real growth and character formation happen. The question needs to shift from why me, poor me, to how is Christ being formed in me here right now through this. What feels like a barrier may actually be the place God is forming you. What are those things in your life that feel like a barrier right now? Job loss? Career dissatisfaction? You don't like the people you work with? Maybe it doesn't pay enough? A broken relationship with a child, a spouse, a friend? Something someone said to you at church that offends you? Feeling stuck, you can't see where you're going next, you can't see the future. Where's all this going? What am I doing here? Uta used that one for a little while when we first moved to Bancroft. What am I doing here? Anyone have an idea what this creature is that lives in the bottom of most lakes here in the Bancroft area? It's a bug. It is a bug. It is a dragonfly nymph. I did not know this. I had to look it up. I always thought they hatched just after black fly season, and you'd see these little dragonflies and then bigger dragonflies. Well, the little ones aren't dragonflies because that's not how it works. They don't start small, eat bugs, and get bigger. They literally are this bug that's at the bottom of the lake. It starts as an egg in water, hatches into a nymph, a fierce predatory water bug that lives underwater for months, up to 5 years, depending on the species. And I looked it up for our area here. It's typically 2 years they live at the bottom of the lake. The nymph, catch this, breathes through gills in its rectum, literally sucking water in and jetting it out its butt for both breathing and quick escapes. There is a lesson in this. I will get to the lesson. Let me see if I can get this little pointer working. There we go. All right, so there's the little nymph. What happens is that after 2 years, he climbs up a stem and he hangs on there. It's not like a dragonfly. It's not like the butterfly. The butterfly actually melts down inside. This guy just crawls out of his shell. When it's ready, triggered by temperature and day length, the mature nymph climbs out of the water onto a stem or rock, which is there. Often at dawn or dusk, it stops feeding and switches to breathing air through spiracles on his body, which are right here behind his head. They're called mesothoracic spiracles, a pair of breathing holes on the sides of the thorax. The thorax is that portion there, right behind his head. Then comes the emergence. The skin splits, opens up behind the head. The dragon slowly pulls its head out first the head, then the thorax, then the legs, then the wings, and finally the long abdomen. It hangs there soft and vulnerable. Sherry, the lesson, soft and vulnerable, going through something it probably didn't think it wanted to, and then begins to pump blood, which is called hemolymph, which is green insect goo, into its crumpled wings to inflate them, which is this picture here. So literally the wings blow up like balloons. And then over the next 2 hours, the wings dry out. What crawled out of the water is a brown, clunky bottom dweller, flies off as a sleek, shimmering aerial hunter with massive eyes, 4 powerful wings. The old empty skin called its excuvia stays behind, stuck to the plant like a perfect ghost of its former self, and that's right there. So just to help Sherry along, we're talking about transformation here. And God is something better for you and me. God can use every circumstance, the crummy ones, the ones we don't like, for his good. So instead of grumbling because you're an ugly nymph, reframe your thinking, because one day you're going to be a beautiful, majestic dragonfly. Apparently they have like 6,000 little lenses in their eyes so they can see everywhere. And I had to look at the butterfly too, just because when I looked it up, it had such a gory description of what takes place. The caterpillar, which is the first one, and then these are the stages to the butterfly, hatches from an egg and spends its entire life eating and growing and molting, which means growing bigger and getting rid of its skin and growing bigger. Its skin multiplies times as I can't read that. When it's ready to transform, it stops eating, again becomes vulnerable, finds a safe spot, and spins a silk pad to attach itself. It then sheds its final caterpillar skin, hardens into a chrysalis, a tough protective casing. So we've seen those hanging. Inside the chrysalis, something wild happens. By the way, if you were to take the cocoon and cut it open when the butterfly is near to come out, the butterfly will die. It has to go through the fight and struggle of tearing out of that, which gives it the necessary strength so that it can survive as a butterfly. Most of the tissues break down into a nutrient soup through a process called histolysis, enzyme breakdown. So literally, this caterpillar eats itself with enzymes and turns into a goo ball. And then the DNA, and it's not called DNA, the DNA that's inside it goes to work, and all the information is there to form the legs, the wings, and everything else to make it into that beautiful butterfly. So it's kind of cool, and it kind of reminds me of the transformation that we're going to see one day. We're going to get new heavenly bodies, and we can't see that. We're not aware. We're just a caterpillar right now, and we're not aware that we're going to be a butterfly. What went in as a leaf-munching crawler comes out as a nectar-sipping winged beauty with compound eyes and scales that create those brilliant colors. The old chrysalis shells left behind, just like the dragon's empty skin. It can't hear, the butterfly. It now smells nectar, sugar, so it's going to become a diabetic. The hairs on its body stand up, and it can smell and sense the sugar on the plants. It has taste buds on the end of its feet. 6,000 lens compound sight, sees in UV light, and drinks bird poop and cow dung for minerals and vitamins. Anyways, the point is something crazy good came out of a struggle, and we have to go through struggles in order to get to the crazy good. All right, so I had a conversation with AI, which was kind of fun because my wife was in the room. Every once in a while, she would shout something out, and it would listen to her for a second, and then back to me. But I couldn't figure out how this whole Paul wrote Philippians in prison bit. My first question is like, what was this after the earthquake when all the prisoners' gates opened and the chains fell off? I couldn't put the stories together, and so I ended up going through this just to do it for you. And it's probably too small to see, so I'll kind of walk you through it. It all started in Philippi. This is where Paul meets the Philippians, which is the letter he's writing that we're talking about today in 1 Philippians. That's around 50 AD, and it's when Paul and Silas were imprisoned because they cast out a demon in a slave girl who had the ability to see the future. And her masters were upset, so they all started beating on Paul and Silas. The guards witnessed this and came and saved Paul and Silas and took them into custody. But once they took them into custody, they were prisoners. So based on this riot, Paul is taken to Jerusalem for his safety. And he speaks to the crowd and appears before the Jewish council called the Sanhedrin. It takes a few days. And they find out that he's a Roman citizen, and he says, I want my Caesar ticket. I need to talk to Caesar because I'm a Roman citizen. And so what they do is they transfer him into a prison for 2 years as he undergoes just the process of that and has to meet with Governor Felix and Festus. He then appears before King Agrippa and appeals to Caesar. And then he is headed off in the boat. And this is the story where there's the storm. And the boat crashes. And then he lands on a little island near Sicily called Malta. And he gets bit by a snake. And he doesn't die. And they think he's a god. And then he heals people. And that goes on for 3 months while he stays there. And then they finally continue the voyage and get him to Rome. And then from there, they get him to Rome, and that's where this story, what Jill just read, is taking place. He's literally in house arrest with guards guarding him 24/7. There's a a 18-inch chain from his left wrist to their right wrist all day long, 24/7 for 2 years. Well, maybe it was his left hand because he had to write. This is where he wrote all the letters. This is where we get they call them the prison epistles. Philippians, Ephesians, Colossians, and Philemon were all written in that 2-year period while he was hanging out with the guards. You heard the story of Epaphroditus, who comes to visit Paul, almost dies from a sickness, and then he's the one that actually takes the letter that Jill just read back to the yeah, those guys. He takes it back to them, and that's where they get to hear what Paul's doing. And then after this first Philippians letter that we're looking at this morning, that's when he finally meets up with them again and gets to rejoice. And so that's kind of where all this story was taken, and I didn't have it clear in my head, and I've been listening to the Bible stories for my entire life, so I thought I'd share it with you too. All right, I'm going to read Philippians again, because our teaching focus is using scripture this round versus topical, being more focused on a passage. And I just want you to listen to it. I'm going to read it in the Message, which I wouldn't say is a very accurate translation, but it is definitely more conversational. I want to report to you, friends, that my imprisonment here has had the opposite of its intended effect. Instead of being squelched, the message has actually prospered. The message is the gospel. All the soldiers here, and everyone also, too, found out that I'm in jail because of the Messiah. This piqued their curiosity, and now they've learned all about him. Not only that, but most of the followers of Jesus here have become far more sure of themselves in the faith than ever, speaking out fearlessly about God, about the Messiah. It's true, some here preach Christ because with me out of the way, they think they'll step into the spotlight, but the others do it with the best heart in the world. One group is motivated by pure love, knowing that I'm here defending the Messiah, wanting to help. The others, now that I'm out of the picture, are merely greedy, helping to get something out of it for themselves. Their motives are bad. They see me as their competition, so the worse it goes for me, the better they think for themselves. So how am I to respond to that? I've decided that I really don't care about the motives, whether mixed, bad, or indifferent. Every time one of them opens their mouth, Christ is proclaimed, so I'm going to cheer them on. And I'm going to keep that celebration going because I know how it's going to turn out. Through your faithful prayers, and he's talking to the Philippians, and the generous response to the Spirit of Jesus Christ, everything he wants to do in and through me will be done. I can hardly wait to continue on my course. I don't expect to be embarrassed in the least. On the contrary, everything happening to me in this jail only serves to make Christ more accurately known, regardless of whether I even live or die. They didn't shut me up. They gave me a platform. Alive, I'm Christ's messenger. Dead, I'm his prize. Life versus even more life. I can't lose. As long as I'm alive in this body, there's good work for me to do. If I had to choose right now, I'd hardly know which I'd choose. Hard choice. The desire to break camp here and be with me, be with Christ, is powerful. Some days I think of it would be nothing better than to go. But most days, because whatever you are going through, I'm sure there is better for me to stick it out here. So I plan to be around for a while, companion to you as your growth and joy in this life of trusting God continues. You can start looking forward to a great reunion when I come to visit you again. We'll be praising Christ, enjoying each other. And that does happen in Paul's fourth missionary journey. So we're going to look at 5 key takeaways from that passage. Joy and rejoicing are possible even in the difficult circumstances. Paul repeatedly rejoices despite being in the chains. His joy stems from the gospel's progress, not him being comfortable. There is purpose-driven joy that transcends our life situation. So it's not just life happiness, transcends to what's going on. I don't know if you realize this, but the 24/7 with Paul, they changed out those guards every 4 hours. So he literally came into contact with probably 4,000 4-hour guarding contacts over the course of the 2-year period. And those, I don't know if it's in my notes here or somewhere else, but those were weird times. Like, think about it. He was constantly chained to another man. What was bath time like? Like, what was toilet time like? What was meal time like? And Paul wouldn't stop preaching the gospel, and everyone was talking about it, and these were the elite guards. And so they were going back to Caesar's palace and talking to everyone else. And you'll see at some point, Paul says in his letter, say hi to all my friends, translation brothers, people who became saved in Caesar's palace, because that was the impact. So here Paul's going through this time of being chained up to another elite guard every day, all day long for 2 whole years. I've watched people come to the OPP detachment and be detained for a night, and it's miserable for 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 2 o'clock the next day. It's hell for them. Here he is for literally 2 years, and the impact God used for doing that. Here's another message we can do as a takeaway. Suffering can advance God's purposes. So when you are suffering, pause, reframe, and see if maybe God is using you in your circumstances. Paul's imprisonment shows us that trials can be used to spread the gospel and put a spring in a step of other Christians around us as we continue to serve. I think that's a piece we often don't think about very much. We think about, what did I get out of the service today? What is happening in my life? Versus, when I show up, what does God do with that in someone else's life? It might be just the lifeline they need. Don't let being petty or offended get in the way of participating in God's story. So Tony took this picture of the would-be, which was kind of cool. I remember when I showed up, this is just this past week, and when I arrived, it was deafening. Like, there was 5 chainsaws running all at the same time, and it was just screaming chainsaws and people working and men grunting, and I won't say what the women were doing, and everyone was working together. And it went on for an hour and a half, and I thought, what a testimony to the neighborhood that suddenly all this wood shows up. Someone gets all the wood. It's done in an hour and a half. It was dinner time, so there wasn't, it wasn't too noisy for the neighborhood. And I thought, you know what? Sometimes the gospel is shared through our actions that are on display. Here you go, Tony. Here's the real picture he sent me. Okay. Another lesson. Focus on Christ above motives. We always like to figure out what someone else's motives are. Whether others were just preaching sincerely or selfishly, this is what it was talking about. Other people, when Paul was in prison, house arrest, others were preaching the gospel, and he says, I don't care. They're actually preaching the gospel even though it's a selfish motive. How often do we try to figure out others' motives and use that as an excuse to disconnect or disengage? Withholding support for a ministry, they did something wrong, they screwed up, there was sin. Not going to church, not hanging out with other Christian friends just because I had a bad conversation. Wouldn't it be better just to get that resolved and then the kingdom of God goes on? Another lesson, life and death are in God's hands. Paul's perspective, he said, if I die, it's gain. If I keep living, well, I'm serving God, and that's a good thing too, and I have a purpose. So he encourages us to see life as an opportunity for service, and that death is something that we can be gained. I've found myself sometimes now going, sure hope the rapture comes soon. It's getting messy out there. So the big picture of Philippians chapter 1, verses 12 to 26, which you've heard read twice today, it illustrates Paul's joyful resilience, unwavering faith, and selfless concern for others. Joyful resilience, unwavering faith, selfless concern for others. And it was a choice. His example teaches us that even in adversity, we can trust God's purposes, rejoice in the spread of the gospel, and balance personal comforts with service to others. And I would add to that, it's not just the gospel. I get a lot of satisfaction being involved in our men's group and seeing other people getting serious with God. It's awesome to see and to know that God's used me to be a part of that. So view trials as opportunities. So when you don't get that job, it's an opportunity. When you're having a rough time with your wife, it's now an opportunity because you want to see your character grow and God's kingdom grow. So this is I tried something else out. If you ever go to your photos and you want a photo that represents something, so I was calling this a story time in my mind for this slide. So I typed into my photos story time, and it came up with a picture of Uta. We were at another church, and it was story time at the front of the church, and all the kids were getting read a story. So I thought, that's my background. I have two little stories just to share that are kind of reinforce this reframing idea. I'm changing the names, so you don't know who I'm talking about. So first, there's Stanley. Stanley has night terrors, and Stanley's sharing with a group of people that he's been having night terrors for years, and he sometimes doesn't know what to do with it, and kind of positioning it like, why did God allow so many bad things to happen to me that I'm now having night terrors? And there was a visitor in the room, and he said, everyone kind of gave some advice or whatever, and the visitor said, what's a night terror? And the person tried to explain, and he goes, that sounds like something positive to me. What? Positive? No, this is awful. This is terrible for me. And he said, why don't you think about it differently? Why don't you flip it? Why don't you think about it as a positive? That, yeah, you went through those tough times, but you went through those tough times for other people and helped them in crisis. They didn't have to go through as hard a time. And God has built you to be able to take this. And God's going to be with you, and he's going to help you to be able to take this. And you were doing great things in your community when you took on these hard things. And I think it was a turning point for this person in their mindset where they realized, wait a minute, it's not like woe is me all the time. It's like God was using me. He chose me to put me through this struggle. Kind of interesting, another guy, not named Bradley, but I like Bradley and Stanley. He was talking, and actually he was with Stanley and I, and he was talking, and he was crying, and I feel so shameful. I had to go to prison. I've lost my job. My wife left me. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. He even looked up and swore at God in front of us I'm angry and hurt. And Stanley, having just gone through someone telling him maybe you should look at it as positive and reframing and having a positive result out of that and feeling good about it, shared with Bradley. Why don't you look at this positively? Why don't you look at this as if you're upset with all these things because you're a good person. You care. Clearly you care. It's bothering you. You're feeling shame. And that just clicked. This guy, he hung on to that. Stanley gave him a little cross to carry to remind him of God. And he said to us, he clutched it the whole way home and was saying, I'm a good person, and God wants me on his team, and God's got something more for me. And it was just cool to see that flip. So, Sherry, the lesson is reframe. It's a bad circumstance, and then if we reframe, it can become a good thing, and God can use it. Okay. This is close to my last slide. I was sitting there this morning, and this verse came to my mind, and it's the second time it came to my mind, so I thought it's kind of like a good finish up to Philippians. Be a Paul, be like Paul. And this is what Paul had to say. Though I am free and belong to no one, I've made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I am myself not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law. So as to win those not having the law, to the weak I became weak, there's a mistake in here. To the weak I became weak. To win the weak, I'm sorry. I've become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do this all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. Okay, so this is a challenge slide that Steve gave to me. I did not write it, and I'm just going to say, I believe you should try and do this and commit to this. Write one thing down. So you just got to write one thing down where you actively had something going on and you decide to reframe it. And by writing it down, I use OneNote for my little chicken scratches. And I know Matt, I can see him right now, he's taking a picture of the screen because he's now going to put it out to the guys group and say, on Monday night, name one thing. And so maybe a conversation, this moment is a conversation that's draining you, you're going to reframe. A task you don't want to do, but you're going to reframe. A limitation you wish you could change, choose to reframe. A place you feel stuck, I'm not going to put it in the box of I'm stuck. And a circumstance you didn't choose, and instead say, God, how are you showing up in this? And so write that down.